All right, so here we are for night two at the Gorge from 2009. Thanks to Evan for donating to the cause and requesting these shows here, getting a couple of whiteboards. And also, I should probably mention John Madden passed away tonight, and in some way, John Madden influenced this whiteboard thing. I remember thinking, like, I know John Madden didn't exactly use a whiteboard and a Sharpie, but somehow, some way, this whole thing was influenced by Madden. And obviously, if you're a guy somewhere in between, 30 and 50, you probably played the game for hours and hours and hours. So, enough about the legend John Madden. On to these legends, the Phish. And here we were for night two. Now, I gotta say, on paper, I wasn't super excited about listening to this one. Night one, I definitely remember it from all the way back in '09. This one, however, not necessarily the case. And as you see, we had a whiteboard malfunction. Driver almost got left off. And it must have been a little something going on in there because as I was listening to it, I felt like Driver and 20 Years Later probably should have been flip flopped. The way the Tweezer jam was going, it kind of had a little bit of a 20 Years Later feel to it. It's kind of just a little bit, a little dark, heavy Phish, and that's kind of where the jam was in a little bit in the Tweezer. But then they go to Driver, then they go to 20 Years Later. So maybe that was going on there with the malfunction. I felt like those should have been flip flopped. Tried to just leave Driver out altogether. But let's get back here to the beginning. Mango Song opened it up, and then that's a nice little opener. Not something that happens too often, probably. Didn't check the stats, and then we get a roaring Chalk Dust Torture. Not a lot of jamming, but just straight ahead. You got the feeling for what Trey was into this night. The 20 years later. I think maybe in the there was just little parts where Trey just wanted to sneak in a little bit of shredding. So we get the Mango Chalk Dust Boom Boom opening up. And then Middle of the Road, yeah, the Mike and Leo song. They only played this one twice back in '09, and it just didn't quite fit. The Mike songs are usually awesome. But the Mike and Leo stuff, Middle of the Road, I can certainly do without that. Hopefully that one stays away forever. Then we got the Tweezer. Only a 13, 14-minute Tweezer, but it did give us our delivery of a jam here early in the first set. Then, like I mentioned, after that they went to the Driver, then the 20 Years. That would have just been perfect if they'd have flip-flopped that. Could have almost had the Tweezer 20 years later. Kind of felt like it was all one big thing. Then went into the Driver, and then the other Leo McConnell, got going down during Yamar. I mean, this jam pretty much belonged to Leo there. Getting it done, Yamar, one of the highlights in the first set. Then we get, a Smoking Its Ice, a Wolfman's Brother with a proper telephone ring from Trey. Again, toward the end, just wanting to rip, and then finally Trey, the hero, steps forward in character zero. It seemed like throughout the whole first set, that's all he wanted to do. Just like, step aside, guys, and let me go to town and be a guitar hero. And he was, and then we get a very nice Antelope. There were some parts of the Antelope almost felt like a slave to the traffic light. Then we finally get ripping and roaring and Antelope like you would expect. A long, long 90-minute first set. Kind of felt like maybe the zero was going to end it, but it did not. Like I said, a very slave to the traffic light. So if you're a Wolfman's guy, you got to hear that. If you're an Antelope lover, you got to hear it. The Yamar, I don't want to say the surprise hit because we get plenty of good Yamars, and I'm a 20 Years Later fan. Tweezer, of course. Maybe the only low light here a little bit, Middle of the Road, just didn't quite hit the spot for a Phish song. Then, as I was saying, Trey was wanting to just rock out over here in the first set. So the second set, we get going early on here with rock and roll. And for a 20-plus minute jam, I feel like more of those minutes, it just wasn't quite hitting the spot. Not even going to probably be the highlight of the second set for me. Maybe a couple of surprises here, because then the Maki Supa, they give it a little bit of an extra treatment. Maybe they even felt like they left a little on the table. Trey mentioning that he woke up, had breakfast, then went right back to bed in the Maki Supa. The Alaska Jam had a little bit, I was like, boy, this sounds like classic rock. There's a point I was like, I could imagine hearing the Allman Brothers or just one of those 70s styles classic rock bands. That's what the Alaska Jam sound like. Then they kind of race through a wedge, a really quick wedge, and then we get into You Enjoy Myself every single time. I'm going to enjoy that. The vocal jam, pretty sucky, and I don't mean like sucky isn't bad. I mean just kind of a sucky sound to the vocal jam. So we're always going to take that. And then they follow that up with Numberline, more Trey wanting to rock out. And then Piper, again, more Trey wanting to rock out. So boom, he gets his chance there. Boom, he gets his chance there. We're always going to take a late second set Piper. Although, this wasn't, I love Piper. One of my favorite jam vehicles, as they say. But this one, maybe just because it was late in the night, maybe 7 or 8 minutes so there. Then we get a quick grind. Then the Good Times, Bad Times, Tweezer Reprise encore. I love me some Tweezer Reprise. Not left off tonight. Get the Tweezer all the way over here. You almost forgot. The Good Times, Bad Times, well, it did kind of have a rock and roll feel to it. A little classic rock feel, so That made sense. Not a whole lot of bad times. Mostly good times at the Gorge in 2009. Teddy, looky there. Boom. All right, guys, and good news tonight with the dinner and a movie, huh? All right, that's going to be pretty cool. No audience from the ninth cube. I swore Phish would never play without an audience, but didn't see this one coming. Boom. Thanks again, Evan, and we'll see y'all soon.